So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Aiwan Obinyan, who's the founder at AiAi Studios. So, Aiwan, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself at AiAi Studios, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here. So, my name is Aiwan Obinyan. I am the founder and exec producer at AiAi Studios. And we have been going for 11 and a half years. It will be 12 years in December.
Wow,
So, definitely proud of having stuck it out for that long.
absolutely.
And we produce film, TV, music, and podcasts. And we work with everyone from your major broadcasters and streamers like Audible, the BBC, the UN, and so on, all the way through to indie creators, but also businesses. So developing their sort of B2B podcasts and really helping them to leverage the power of podcasting to tell their story, gain new clients, generate new leads, build thought leadership, and also build trust with their clients, because it is a really powerful, authentic, real tool for that. And in addition, we have our sister organization, which is called Roots and Rigor, and that's led by my partner and wife, Dr. Tamanda Walker. And it exists for the purposes of social impact and social justice, looking into things like health, inequalities,
Yep,
but also data and insights that power the productions that we do. And
yep,
so, how they work in synergy is, for example, a lot of researchers have incredible data, incredible research, incredible reports, but it's all locked up in the ivory tower. And
yep.
so, what we do is we use the power of the entertainment industry to disseminate that research, those reports, that data in a way that the layperson can
Wonderful.
understand and given it greater impact in the world, so it's not just stuck behind those ivory towers or in the hands of policy holders. And yeah, we exist to tell stories, difficult stories, interesting stories, crazy stories, unearthing hidden truths, and yeah, just really digging into the stuff of life, the human stuff of life.
Love it, absolutely love it. And when we knew we were going to have this conversation, I became slightly nervous, obviously, because as we said before we started, the quality of these podcasts, I have to say, I'm not top, but I'll look forward to any feedback they have on that side. But interesting enough that when you talked about disseminating information through it through different media channels, one of the things we as action coach we believe we coined this phrase. We might be wrong, but certainly it's a phrase we believe in is edutainment. I
Same.
educating people with
Yeah.
entertainment, making it interesting because we also all know how we communicate information is quite key, isn't it? If we do it in an interesting and exciting storytelling way, we're going to get way more depth of recall and value from that than just plain facts and figures, I guess.
Yeah, no, for real. And thinking about that word, edutainment. So the great KRS-One, the old school hip hop icon, he actually coined that term
Brilliant.
way back, and he called it edutainment. It was this idea of using hip hop to both educate and entertain the Black
Right.
community on the things that ail us, the ways we can unite ourselves and use our collective power to empower our communities and liberate us from the chains of a capitalistic, white supremacist society that we exist in, particularly when you think about hip hop in the context of New
Yep.
York and what was going on in New York in the 80s, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. So maybe I will, if you start with discuss, or if let's learn a little bit more about your background,
Yeah.
how you got into business and why this particular one for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I was actually thinking about this question. And I think I've always wanted to be in the space of media entertainment, and for me specifically audio. We were talking earlier about how you were saying that you're more visual and
Yeah,
kinesthetic.
yeah,
I'm definitely more auditory.
yeah.
Like
Brilliant.
that's just my thing. It's sound. It's always been my thing. And
Yes.
I was thinking about my early days as an 8 year old. You know, I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household, and so it dictated what you could have and what you couldn't have. And one of the things you couldn't have was a TV. So I actually grew up without a TV. What we
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah. So, but what we did have was an old school cassette, a double cassette deck that
Yep.
was also played cassettes and recorded to them as well.
Yes.
So as a youngster, that was my
Yeah.
entertainment, right? So I figured out quite quickly that when you hold down record and press play, or the other way around, you could record onto the cassettes.
Yes.
So I would spend time recording speeches, songs, that sort of thing. And I had my best friend Jennifer lived in the other block opposite us on our council estate, and she'd come round to be looked after by my mum, and we'd record songs together on the cassette. And one of my earliest memories is I remember one time she'd come round, we'd written a wonderful song. We thought it was wonderful. We were 8, it was probably shit. Sorry, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Of course, absolutely, 100%.
Okay. But so we thought it was great. I thought it was great. She'd gone home. She wasn't coming back till the next week. And I listened back to the recording and I realized we'd made a mistake. So now I'm thinking to myself, but I need to get this song done. It's not finished. And I remember sort of studying the actual physical cassette and looking at the magnetic tape that sort of goes around and thinking, well, our song is on that tape. I wonder if like there's a way for me to cut the bit out of the tape and put it back together
Oh,
again,
wow.
so we don't have the mistake. So I got a razor blade. Guys, it was the early 90s. There was no health and safety, there's none of that. So I found a razor blade and started cutting the tape to try and get to that mistake. After a few attempts, I managed to do it and tape it back together. And I had got rid of the mistake out of our song on a cassette tape, which is kind of crazy. Now, obviously, back then, I didn't know what editing was or music production. That was not part of my vocabulary at all. But looking back on it, I realized that A, I was obviously a perfectionist. B, I loved audio and I wanted to get it right. And C, I was willing to innovate in my mind, whatever I needed to solve the problem that I had in that moment. And obviously that's then led to me producing sound, editing, sound design, music for film, all of that good stuff. So I've always wanted to be in sound.
Well, yeah, actually fascinating that probably led because you didn't have a visual media. Yeah, that's fascinating. I know. I suspect, and we had unfortunately in many ways had TVs from quite an early age. So I think again that probably has led me to be a bit more visual than I am. But it really was quite stunning that when you played the two different sounds, as we said before we started, through the different microphones, I could certainly clearly tell the difference. But I
Yeah.
couldn't. I couldn't necessarily if you tell that something was quality, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I hear that. Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.
And I find I'm the same with the visual side, weirdly. That's
Yes,
one. So I'm like a film director who does sound, which is not the most common mix.
yes,
You see what I mean? So
yeah,
I
yeah,
find that I really need a lot of support on the visual components. I
yeah,
like to work with really brilliant cinematographers because I'm not always that good at visualizing what a thing
yeah.
could look like.
It's such a fascinating part of the human brain that some of we recall and record things in different ways, and
Exactly.
one thing's really important and something we do a lot of is helping people understand that, because if you don't understand it, then there can be a real breakdown in communication. And even sort of teamwork, because we see things differently, as you rightly say. If you're going to be really all over the sound side. If we're not, if we're doing a film, then clearly the team need to be all over the visual side as well, even if that's not you.
Yes,
I guess.
exactly. Yeah.
And going back, you said you've been in business 11 years now, which
Yeah,
is really wonderful. I don't know if you know the unfortunate stats of business survival, but
I do.
yeah. So if 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years, and of the 20, that's 20% that survive, another 80% fail in the following 5 years. So to get to 11 years, get to 10 years, you're in the 4% survival rate. So very, very well done.
Woo, I'm gonna pop a bottle of champagne in December.
Well, that could absolutely. I mean that, and that it's something to do. And I often ask people, entrepreneurial people, how good are you at celebrating?
No, very bad. That's actually a really good question. I am terrible at celebrating. I didn't celebrate 10 years.
No, it's and well, because one of the things we find is the challenge. Lots of entrepreneurial people, what we typically are always looking at of what we haven't achieved yet, rather than what we have,
Yes.
which is fine. It goes with the territory. But what I've often found with people is that if we don't celebrate, celebration builds resilience. So that
Yeah.
when we do have challenging times and we've got something to say, no, but hold on a minute, we're 10 years old, we're 11 years old. We've built this great business, and so it is quite an important thing to do.
Yeah.
But we're not most entrepreneurial people I meet and work with aren't that great. So I hopefully you will crack at least crack a bottle of champagne.
Oh, it has to be done. I think there's even a bottle there, and we'll make sure that it's still there in December.
Brilliant, brilliant. So over that nearly 11 years, what looking back, what are some of the biggest challenges and issues that you've had to overcome, would you say?
So I've had to, we were talking earlier about pivoting.
Yes.
And I feel like for a lot of my business, all I've done is pivot like a basketball player or a ballerina, just constantly trying to
Yeah.
figure out, um, it's almost like sometimes as a business owner, I think one of your most important skills or assets is this almost sixth sense quality of like looking around at the trends and almost just picking up almost subconsciously that something's shifting and that what you're currently doing isn't going to work or it's starting to
Yeah.
change. So for me, I remember one time I looked at our accounts. I was just looking, just a general look at things. And I realized that there were two clients who accounted for something like 80% of our
Right.
revenue and our
Yeah.
turnover. And I just had a little bit of a, this doesn't seem right. And I
Yeah.
think we probably need to diversify, even though they're brilliant clients, they pay on time,
Yeah.
they give us big projects. It's brilliant, it's great. But something inside me said, no, you've got to make an adjustment to that.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And so I did. So we went out, got other clients and sort of shifted that from
Yeah.
sort of 80% to about 40%. And
Brilliant.
then within the next year, both of them went bust.
Wow. Well, I mean, well, that's obviously unfortunate, but well done because that is the challenge. I've seen many businesses that haven't done that, and as you
Yeah.
say, you can't. Very few businesses can afford to lose 80% or even 40%. So even overcoming the 40% that you lost is quite incredible. So well done.
Yeah. And I think part of even being able to do, like you say, the 40% is the systems that you build and being really lean.
Yeah.
Like we've always been really lean. Like we don't really have an office per se. The place that I live has like a working space where I
Yep.
can use private offices, but we don't have those kind of overheads. And
Yeah.
that's always been my mantra, is just be lean as
Yeah.
fuck. That's it.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that I would imagine is also a secret of the longevity of your business because it is the businesses that can do that can survive way better than the ones with the big, as you said, the big overheads, and they're often nice to have, but they
Yeah.
don't allow that great bit of survival. We have a rule. One of the things we talk about in Action Coach is what we call a rule of 10 by 10, and it goes across businesses. For instance, the most stable businesses are the ones where 10% of our leads come from 10 different strategies, if that makes sense. So
Oh,
it the sort of visual, I'm afraid it's a visual analogy, but the visual analogy is a table with one leg is pretty unstable. Two legs,
yeah.
it's still unstable. Three, four, five. If you get to 10 legs on a table, you can afford to lose a couple of legs and still have a stable table. And that's true of marketing. It's very true of client bases. And so it's a really, I think, a great thing to have in mind across businesses is how can I divide this into make up to 10? That's the sort of perfect world. But even five or six, three or four, five or six just create stability if we were to lose one or two of those legs because marketing, like customers, will come and go in many ways. Marketing we're using now is probably quite different to marketing we're using 5, 10 years ago, especially in terms of success rates.
Yep.
So, alongside that, what would you say are some of the biggest learnings you've got about growing a business?
I would say the biggest learning is kind of similar to what you just said about the 10-legged avant-garde table. So having a few legs, so having diverse revenue streams.
Yeah.
So last year in the entertainment industry and actually broadly around across sectors, it was a really tough year because there was so much political uncertainty
Yes.
because we were changing political parties, America was changing political parties and all of
Yeah.
that good stuff. And then in our industry specifically, there were a few other issues. So we had the writer's strike and so on and so forth. So actually last year, the mantra in the entertainment industry was survive to 25. And what was happening was nothing was being greenlit.
Yeah.
No commissioning was happening. Budgets were slashed.
Yeah.
So where before we would have a pipeline built ready to execute on in 2025, we actually ended up having no pipeline whatsoever.
Right.
So it was a really tough year.
Yeah.
And I think what helped us as a company is a few things. Number one, we have a few um, streams of revenue.
Yep.
So, as I said at the beginning, we make film, TV, podcasts, and music. And so, what ended up happening this year is it ended up being a very film heavy year. So,
Right.
so we've kind of been producing. I think we're in the middle of about 4 or 5 film productions this year.
Well,
And last year was more of a podcast heavy year. So,
yep.
being able to almost have all of those streams means that you're not relying on any one sector of the entertainment industry to deliver work
Yeah,
for your
great.
pipeline, right? So that's
Yeah.
the first thing. The second thing that really helped me was robust financial systems. Last year, the financial systems that I built were really, really tested.
Right.
And I think part of the reason why we made it to 2025 is that well, basically, the financial systems we have are ones where every invoice that comes in, we've got multiple pots and it happens automatically. The tax pot, the VAT pot, the savings pot, the profit pot, and then you've got whatever's left over. And
Yep.
so we had like huge amounts of savings. And obviously, because it was a tough year, we didn't have a massive tax bill. So we had a good amount in the tax pot. VAT is paid off because it happens automatically, and whatever's left over rolls into the profit pot. And so we were able to survive because we had really good cash flow. Do
Well,
you see what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
Without
Wonderful.
without that, there would be no AI studios, and we would not be talking. I can tell you that for free.
Goodness. Well done. It and financial mastery at that level. I've worked with businesses into the multi-millions, and tens of people, if not hundreds of people, and don't have that, often don't have that level of financial sophistication because
Oh wow.
financial, that level of financial nous isn't taught that well. Certainly, I don't think in schools. I'm not even sure it's taught in colleges either because it it's sort of common sense stuff, isn't it? It's like you can be taught the finances of business, profit and loss, cash flow, balance sheet. That's information, but this is very much a practical way of securing the safety of your business.
Exactly. And I actually learned that from a book called Profit First
Yes,
by,
great.
do you know Profit First?
Yes,
Yeah, by Mike Michalowicz. And I think what I like about it is when he opens the book, he talks about money in the most basic terms. So like, your mom and your dad, they get their cash from their wages and they just split it into pots. Like this is for the
yeah,
bills, this is for food, this is for, what I mean, whatever it is, savings,
yeah,
a rainy day fund, and so on. And it's just about applying that to your business.
yeah.
And it works at any level, like 6 figures, it works. I'm not yet in the 7 figures, but I imagine it will work then because the
Yeah.
system's already built, right? So it happens automatically.
100%. Yeah, yeah. I mean, what one thing, it's sort of unfortunate thing about growth is that I think a lot of people think, great, once we get to, a million, 5 million, 10 million, all these problems go away, but they don't because
They
as,
don't.
as turnover grows, typically so do overheads grow, so it's the same stuff. So therefore, these really important fundamentals of building safety and security into your business are so valuable for the future.
It's like
Um,
building a muscle, right?
yeah, absolutely.
You got to train it. You can't just say, "Oh, I'll do the running when I get to the start of the marathon," right? You have to have been
Absolutely.
training for it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what I also find interesting sometimes, because I work with businesses from, pretty much from startable through to sort of 50, 100 million, occasionally, is that sometimes businesses forget what got them to the position. So they forget some of the fundamentals of having a strong culture, having a strong vision, even maybe financial security. Typically that does improve because they'll bring, a CFO in or a financial director, but some of the basic principles of how to get to here we forget, and quite often we go into businesses and it's almost like large businesses and starting again around culture, around first principles, around making sure we all know where we're headed. So it's absolutely fascinating and really refreshing to hear you talk about this level of sophistication in a business. Um,
Nice. Yeah. It's good to know that is sophisticated actually, because I just thought it was like just me being a bit like a housewife, being a bit rudimentary with the things. So it's good to know that is actually a, a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I guess when I say sophistication, because I'm sure there's loads of CFOs out there saying, "Oh, there's way more complicated financial models," but
Mhm.
this is the fundamentals
Yeah.
of keeping a business safe and secure.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
and I think that's what I think is really key. and making sure that any decision you make is based on the ability to invest in that decision, from what you said, not potentially robbing Peter to pay Paul, and say, great, okay, we've got a bit of cash here, but we haven't paid the VAT yet, or whatever it would be. So makes a lot of sense. And I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm just keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
There's been a number of people, and I'm trying to remember what the name of my. So I was an athlete coming up. I was in track and field, sprinting. So I did the 100, 200, and the 4x100 meter relay. And I had a coach back when I was 18, and he taught me the importance of listening to your body. Nobody had ever told me that, because obviously I came up in a very religious background. So I was
Yep,
always taught to listen to my spirit,
yep,
and listen to the voice of God. Great.
yep.
That's wonderful. Nobody ever told me to listen to your body, because it will tell you what's going on externally and internally, but also what you need to do, what you need full stop, and what you need to adjust.
Yes,
And that kind of became the foundations, a bit like the Profit First that we're talking about. It became the foundations of me understanding myself in the world. And that's everything from emotions. So, how am I feeling? It's everything from pain. If there's any pain, where is it? Why is it happening? What do I need to do to adjust? It's everything sleep. And these are all things that actually, as a business owner, because it's so stressful, if you're not listening to your body, you are going to be ground down, and you are
yep,
going to be a very ineffective business person and a leader. It's just, there's a no to it. Your body is part and parcel of your business.
yep. Brilliant. I absolutely agree. I think, and add into that, there's that your mind, our minds. It's like sometimes we've just, things like sometimes I found myself sometimes you've got to rest,
Yes.
even though we've got lots to do. Sometimes you're going to go, well, the best thing we can do right now is actually take a little bit of time out, go for a walk,
Yes.
do
Yes.
something. And I guess that's mind and body together. But it is that, driven people. In fact, I just saw a post from a client I've worked with historically, just reflecting on, I think it was about a year ago, that they were working so hard they ended up in intensive care for 6 days. And the learning for
Oh,
that, he just drove himself into the ground, and for all the right reasons, if that makes sense. You'd consider the right reasons, work hard, there's lots to do. But you can't really run a business from an intensive care ward. So
you really
it's,
can't.
it wasn't necessarily the best long-term solution. So yeah, it's really, it 100% wouldn't, I would agree with that. Is that listening, and being really self-aware, but physically, mentally, about what we need right now.
Yeah.
And I want to keen to know if you've got any, whether that's from any source, any key favorite quotes or sayings about business or success or life in general.
Yeah, I've got two actually, and I was really glad you asked this question.
Brilliant.
So my mom would always say, as long as there's life, there's hope.
Yeah.
And that is so interesting, because it seems so simple, but sometimes we can be, as human beings, a bit dramatic, or we're going through really tough times. Everything feels like it's just crazy. You're never going to get over this.
Yeah.
You're in the storms of life, basically. But as long as you have life, then you have hope, because you can hopefully wake up the next day and try again. You can make some
Yeah.
adjustments, you can rewind, apologize, make concessions, or whatever it is you've got to do. And then I think the second one, which has sort of followed me through much of my life, actually comes from the faith that I grew up in, and it's taken from the Bible. And it's from the book of Timothy, the second book of Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. And this verse has got me through everything from homelessness to trying to get out of a domestic abuse situation, through to rebuilding my life, grief, bereavement, all of that stuff. And this verse goes, "For God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind."
Love it.
And that verse has got me through everything, because I would just say it over and over and over again, particularly in moments where I'm really afraid, right?
Yes.
Deeply afraid, like terrified of what's about to happen or what is happening. And that's just comforted me and reminded me that actually inside me, whether you believe in God or not, if it's a higher power, something above
Yeah.
you, but basically you are filled with the power, the love, and the clarity of mind to get through any situation that you might encounter. So don't be afraid.
Love that. Really love that. Um, and what was the reference again? Sorry, just to anyone that's want to look that up. Timothy, Book of
Oh,
Timothy.
second Timothy chapter 1, verse 7.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I will, I'll remember that.
Yeah.
I think it's a first in terms of a biblical reference. So
Oh, really?
thank you for that. That's great. I don't know what that says about the business community, but that's wonderful in my book.
And
And
it reads better in the King James version as well. I think it reads
cool,
better. It's a bit more archaic and Victorian.
brilliant, love it,
Mhm.
absolutely love it. And alongside that, are there any favorite books, podcasts that you can recommend on business? Again, business success, life in general.
Yeah, so there's a few that I'm listening to. So I think I would say Hidden Brain is brilliant. So it just talks about why we do what we do. And I
Okay.
think sometimes as business owners, understanding some of our motivations, but more importantly, understanding the motivations of the people that you're doing business with, I think is
Yeah.
important because it makes you more astute at reading a
Yes.
situation or reading a person, right?
Yeah.
So I love Hidden Brain because it really does highlight aspects of the human mind that govern everything that we do,
Yep.
right?
Brilliant.
So Hidden Brain is brilliant.
Yep.
Now, from a storytelling perspective, because obviously my business is storytelling,
Yep.
so I think for all the people out there whose business is storytelling, and also as a business, you have to tell your story, right? That's part of your
Yep.
brand, right? So I love Blind Boy, the Blind Boy podcast. He
Right.
is Irish.
Yep.
It's a singular, so it's just a monologue, him talking, and he has this ability to take really disparate things and weave them into a cohesive, factual story. So, for example, he'll take digestive biscuits and then the bombing by the IRA when they were trying to bomb Margaret Thatcher,
Yep.
and then he'll weave it, and it all makes sense, and it is actual fact. Like he is
Right.
such a brilliant storyteller. So for me, my business is storytelling. So I feel like I learn a lot about joining dots in interesting ways and the
Yep.
ways that you might approach research for a particular story, and maybe not always starting from the obvious point. Like most people want to start from the beginning. Maybe you should start in the middle, or maybe you
Yep.
should start at the end, and maybe there's some other thing over here you haven't thought about that could come in. And I think we can think about that as business owners in telling our story as well. Where do you start when you tell your story? It doesn't always have to start from the childhood. It could start at the end where you are now, or in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I'll look that up. Yeah, I like to try and develop the ability to storytell better. And funny enough, somebody asked me recently about some processes. So, but that sounds like listening to that podcast and maybe trying to model some of the things that he does would make sense.
Yeah, I think so. Can I give one book as well?
Yes, please. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a brilliant book by a brilliant VC investor called Eric Collins. He's the founder of Impact X, and
Yeah.
he wrote a book called We Don't Need Permission. And that book changed my perspective on me running a business as a Black female business owner.
Wow.
Like, but it's not just for Black women
No,
or
no,
Black
no.
men. No, like anybody, like
Just
there's
give
so much
ourselves
in there.
permission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
give ourselves permission exactly to do what you need to do. I think working class business owners, because obviously my thing is working class people as well, could learn a lot from that business about really taking your seat at the table. And if they don't want you there, then building your own. And there's so much data in there. It's rich with insight. It's just brilliant. So definitely check it out.
That sounds fascinating. I'm not aware of that one because one thing, if this is connected, so one of the things I find, if it's not the majority, it's a large minority of people I speak to on here talk a lot about imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And I would imagine from what you said, that might be a help to anyone that's feeling that imposter syndrome that they don't deserve to be where they should be, or would that be right? It's sort of giving
Oh,
yourself
yes.
permission to be successful. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's interesting actually because I remember it takes you back. I coached somebody that I adored very many years ago, quite towards the beginning of my career, and he was an ex-colleague from a previous business, and I coached him for a while, and we do a lot about goal setting and dreaming, and he'd had this he'd had a dream to have a fast car. It was one of those things. It was I can't remember which one.
Ferrari.
Yeah, it was one. Yeah, it was. I can't remember exactly what it was, but one thing we always do is to make people connect with the dream. So rather than
Yes.
have it on the, you can have it on the wall, but let's go and have a test drive in a car, or if there's a particular place you want to live, let's go and find. So anyway, I remember him. Him going and actually got him to sit in the car and give me a call while he was sitting in the car, and he came and he did, and it was it was great for him in many ways. But then he came and saw me the next time, and he talked about a lack of deservedness. And he said I come from a working class background. There's a whole issue around wealth and wealth, and he just said I'm not sure I deserve this. And
Wow.
it was so powerful, and it was great to have gone through the process, because then we realised there was something deeper to work on, because there was that deservedness, I guess, that imposter syndrome again. But there is a lovely quote from, I think it's Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, that I know he often says, I think he said, I love imposter syndrome because it means I'm in the right room. I'm going to learn something.
Mm. Okay,
So
that's an interesting reframing, actually.
I
Yeah.
think I think it is. I think it's different to what you were talking about in the book, but it is a great one to say. If I'm not feeling a little bit on edge, then I'm probably not in the right place to learn something. So it's an a very interesting topic, I find.
Yes, I think so. Did your client manage to work through that? Is he
Um,
where's he at?
to some extent, I think part of it actually was. I think one of the learnings he had and I've had, and with many other people, is often the things we believe to be what we want are actually things that culturally we should want. Like the fast car is what. And I think part of the realization was he didn't really want a fast car,
Oh, okay.
if
That's
that makes
super
sense.
interesting.
So,
Yes, it is.
but we wouldn't have found out if we hadn't gone through that process. He might have bought it. He's certainly capable of buying it. We grew the business to a level where that he was capable of it, but he never did, because it wasn't. He realised as part of that process that it wasn't the most important thing to him.
Okay.
So yes. So the answer, I guess, is partial. We didn't get to a point where we bought the car, but we did get to a point where we realised that he didn't need to or even want to. There was
Yeah.
much more things spiritually that he was more interested in. And he'd always been interested in, funnily enough, but it's almost like, and I find this quite a lot, that, it's like, well, I should want a fast car because I'm a business owner. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's fine, but no, why don't you work out what you really want, and let's go and find that, whether that's a fast car, a slow car, no car, or, a camper van. Let's get the thing that you really want, because that's really going to drive you forward, rather than things that we think other people expect us to have. As
Yeah. Yeah, and the system wants you to keep wanting things as well, to
Yeah,
keep
yes, that's
wanting the
true.
next bigger thing. The
Yes.
capitalism as well also does that to us. And so, yeah, I can imagine that you have to spiritually disentangle yourself from
Yeah.
that system of constant consuming and buying for the sake of ego or just for the sake of buying.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really interesting, because we do a lot of work with this, because we fundamentally believe that an the purpose of an owner managed business is to give the owners the lifestyle they choose to have. They can do them other great things, within the community, with the economy, and but that's why many people start businesses, to create a lifestyle that they choose to have. And it's getting back in touch with that, what that lifestyle really is. And so many people that I've worked with have sort of come to their own personal realization that it's quite different to what they thought it was going to be.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
mean, one thing we did a long time ago, we did a survey of business owners, and the number one, we said, what do you really want to achieve from your business? And thinking there might be words around, success or wealth or whatever it might be, because and it was peace of mind,
That
just peace of
that's
mind.
literally one of my two things. My two things for starting business: peace and freedom. That's it.
Brilliant. Yes.
I know what my motto is. Like, I just want peace and I want freedom.
Absolutely. And 100%. And freedom's the other one that came up so strongly, because it is
Okay.
just, because that's really, that's what, having some success in business gives us, isn't it? The freedom to do things that many other people probably can't or choose not to do.
Yeah.
And if we can tap into that, then it becomes a very powerful resource, because from a coaching perspective, it's really important that I'm able to tap into what really drives somebody forward.
Yes.
to help them and motivate them in the difficult times, to make sure we're focused on. And if they're focused on the thing that doesn't drive them forward, then it won't have any motivational value, if that makes sense. So in
Exactly. Yeah.
the client I mentioned, the case of the car, if we'd have had that on the wall through this process, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah.
And so that was fascinating.
That is fascinating, actually. That's super
Yeah,
insightful for me, I think.
it's yeah, no, and it's I guess it comes a little bit back to you talk about, listen to your body, listen to your mind. It's like we've got to get self-aware about these things to make sure that we're going in the right direction. I think it was I think Stephen Covey has a great quote about it that what was it? There's no point climbing the ladder of success to find we put it up against the wrong wall.
Yeah, I've read that one. It's a good
It's
one, though, because it's
a
very
great one, isn't
true.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it makes you think, doesn't it? Because you think, well, that's what, there's lots of different ladders, there's lots of different walls. So let's make sure we get the right ones, the right combination.
Yep.
Otherwise, it is a bit pointless. So, Owen, I'm keen to know what you've learned about yourself in throughout your journey so far.
Well, I I think, yeah. So the business has like evolved a lot over the years, and it's put me in very different situations across
Yep,
different sectors of the entertainment industry that require different skills. So I think one of the first things that I've learned is that I am a very quick learner, and I am highly adaptable,
yep,
and I can handle a lot of pressure. I
yep,
think the amount of times I've had to pivot and the amount of times I've pivoted successfully, I have since found out is actually not that common. And that actually a lot of businesses fail because they get to that point where they should pivot and they can't or they won't. And so they stay doing the same thing, and then it gives them the same results, but those results aren't as much as they should be. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
For the
yep,
changes that are happening in their space. So I also think that I actually thrive in the uncertainty. Weirdly,
yep,
it doesn't freak me out as much
yep,
as maybe it probably should. And I have this ability to hang in there when it looks like all is lost. It's almost like I can see that little speck of light in a dark tunnel, and it's like I've got this tenacity to keep going towards the light even when
yep,
it's really really difficult, like that.
yep,
You have those dark nights of the soul. Sometimes
yep,
you cry yourself to sleep. You don't know where your next client's coming from or the next invoice, but somehow I just have this ability to hang in there and keep going and keep talking and keep trying, and then somehow it comes off. I have this saying that I always say, it's like a little mantra in my head. A lot can change in a day, a lot can change in a week, a lot can change in a day, a lot can change. And I just keep saying that. And
yeah.
then somehow it happens.
Bang on. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's having that positive attitude, and it's true, and
Yeah.
it's locking into the times that happens.
Yeah.
I would agree with you completely. I've had those experiences where you sort of, it's almost like to the brink, and then somebody out of the blue phones up and says, I'd like to re-engage, or I've been watching your marketing, I've been watching you, I'd like to get involved, right? And it happens just at the right time.
Exactly.
And it's not over till it's over, is it? That's absolutely bang
Oh, I
on.
like that's another good phrase. It's not over till it's over.
Well, I'm gonna try and go one better if I can, and there's a quote, right? I'll try and get this right. So if I don't, from the best, what's is it? The best exotic marigold hotel. I think that's the
Oh
word,
yes.
which
Yeah.
is it'll all be right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end.
Yes, I like that one as well.
I just think that's so cool. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, it's not all right. It's just not the end. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's keep going. And of course, the final one that I would do, I'm a bit of a film buff, is I think probably comes from Finding Nemo, which is Dory swimming along going, just keep
Oh, just
swimming,
keep
just keep swimming.
swimming, just keep swimming. Oh yeah, I love Dory. She's like one of the best characters in a film ever.
I think it's great, and
I love her.
it is just a role model for business people. Just keep swimming, just keep
Yeah.
swimming.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So looking forward now, Owen, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
So the entertainment industry is just going through a lot of stuff. Sorry, this thing has just decided to a notification. Okay. So the entertainment industry is going through a lot.
Yep,
It's in turmoil. There's just no two ways about it. The commissioning landscape is terrible.
yep,
Um, AI is doing lots of things that affect us
Yes, of course.
musically, writing wise, film wise, all of that good stuff. So I think the future for AiAi Studios is to maintain our diverse revenue streams and to
Yep.
build on that. So we're
Yep.
working a lot more in the research space, as I spoke about in the beginning.
Yes.
And we've got our first few contracts in that space in terms of making films and that sort of thing.
Great.
So building out the research organization as well into a powerhouse in that sort of research, insight, social impact space is
Yep.
another thing that we're working on. Harnessing AI rather than
Yep.
being afraid of AI. I love
Yeah.
tech. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, what can this tech do for me and for the
Yes.
business? So harnessing it and not being afraid of it, I think is going to be a big part of our future. Me and my partner developed our podcast. It's called Rigor and Flow with Aiwan and Tamanda. That's doing
Brilliant.
really well. So
Brilliant.
yeah, we launched season one that ended last week. We're launching season two next week. So growing that as well, because I think in this new era, this new future, I think a big part of it is going to be your personal brand. So if you're the kind of business
Yes.
owner who just sits behind the scenes, which is me, I prefer that. I really
Yep.
do like being behind the scenes. You're not going to do as well. You have to
Yeah.
be out there. You have to be talking. You have to be showing what you know, uh, turning up to
Yeah.
things, talking to people, having your own platform, like you with Action Coach. You've got this podcast. That is your shop front. And you're
Yeah.
saying, I am Chris, I do Action Coach, and here are all the great people I'm connected with. Here are their stories. Here's my story. And then that builds trust. It builds thought leadership. It builds so
Yeah.
many things, leads. So I think really working on that personal branding and the company branding
Yeah.
through the platform of our podcast is the future for us.
Brilliant. That makes a lot of sense, and I completely agree. It's I'm a bit the same as you. As I said before we started, we started this from a feeling of necessity to support people, but it you know I love talking about business. I love talking to people about business and how they've gone through it. But yeah, I think that's a key point of differentiation is who we are is clearly different, and so I was talking to somebody yesterday about one of them, another quote from a lady we had on here some time ago, which I really love, which was, "Be yourself because everybody else is taken,"
Yes,
which I
that's a
guess
good
is
one.
personal brand, isn't it? I do. I think that's
That's a
lovely.
good
There's
one.
lots of
That
things
needs
around.
people need to remind themselves of that one. I think that needs to be a constant on
Yes,
people's walls.
yeah, because it is, and we're enough. That's I don't know who said that, but I think that's where we are enough. And if we are ourselves is enough, then let's just crack on and use ourselves as our personal brand.
Exactly.
Really key. And I'm keen to know what you'd say to anyone that's thinking of going into business right now.
Haha. I would say do it. Do you know
Brilliant.
what? Yeah. Is it going to be tough? Yes. Are you going to lose parts of your mind? Absolutely. But what it does do is there's a certain thing that being in business builds in you, a sense of trusting yourself because you have only yourself to trust.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There isn't like a boss who's going to pay you a wage every month. You have to go out and do that. It's almost like going back to primal times, right? Where
Yep.
if you don't go out and hunt, you're not going to eat.
Yep.
If
Yeah.
you don't go out and gather your berries and your nuts and stuff like that, you're not going to eat. So I think being a business owner is that. And so if you do that, it's almost training you to trust yourself. So that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is, even if it fails, and I've had some failed businesses, I always say that AiAi Studios is actually built on the failed businesses that I
Yes.
had in the past.
Yep.
Like, even if you fail, you will learn so much about yourself,
Yeah.
about the world of business. And then you take those learnings into the next one and you build a business that works for you because there are different types of businesses. Some
Yeah.
businesses work for people who have more of an introvert temperament. Some work for those. There are businesses you can build that are better for those who are more risk averse.
Yep.
And then there are businesses for those who are just like, yeah, I'm going to 10x my shit, and they're just out
Yep.
there going for the VC funding. There's all kinds of business. And yes, I think particularly in this era now where things are so unstable,
Yeah.
the more streams of revenue and income you can have, the more resilient you are going to be for the future
Brilliant.
that we have ahead.
Yeah.
Long speech.
No, great speech. But going back to what we talked about is having that diversification of revenue streams, of client bases, of is really key because and things are changing so fast. If we are stuck on one course, and the world changes in front of us, then that is a risky strategy. So having a number available to us is really sensible. And if you started again, is there anything significant you do differently, do you think?
Yes. A few things. So I think I would sooner rather than later document my process so it's not all in my head.
Yeah.
And then I would use that to build really strong, robust, resilient operation systems
Yep.
to then in turn bring people in earlier.
Yep.
Because what ended up happening in the first few years of AiAi Studios is that I ended up working in rather than on the business. So you're just nose to the grindstone, working away. Yeah, I'm going to grow this. I'm going to grow this. But actually, if you're just selling your time for money,
Yeah.
you've got 8 hours in the day because the other 16 are for sleeping, doing life stuff,
Yes.
right? So you've really only got 8. And even
Yeah.
when I was working like 15 hours a day, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So the sooner you can work out how you do what you do, how things need to be done, and you can bring people in to take that load off, then you can start to strategize about how to grow the business beyond what it currently is. So beyond selling your time for money. So I think I would do that. But I do understand the reasons why I didn't do that. And a lot of it was that I built this company almost as a safe place from what is a very male dominated industry. I saw a lot of things that went on in studios, particularly to my female peers, and a lot of them no longer are in the industry because of what was going on in those
Right.
spaces with those guys in studios.
Yeah.
And so quickly, when I was in college, I was like, I need to build my own thing because that's the only way I'm going to have a space where I'll have full autonomy,
Yeah.
nobody coercing me to do sexual favors for them to record something or produce something.
Yeah.
And so I think for the first few years of AiAi Studios, it was just me doing my thing in my little safe space. So I do get it. But looking back, I would have used 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. You don't
Yeah.
have a spirit of fear. Use your power and build something that's bigger than you that can help even more women like yourself. So
Love it. Absolutely love it. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
I would say, what advice would I give them? I would say, talk to people,
Hmm.
surround yourself with experts. I would say, particularly if they're a female, let's say they're a female 18-year-old business owner, I would say the sooner you know your worth, the better. So do the research, find out what people are being paid, especially the men. So know your worth,
Yeah.
ask for your worth,
Yeah.
and even add 10 to 20% on top of what you're asking for, because even then you're probably only at the level of the men when you add the 10 to
Yeah.
20%.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely know your worth and ask for your worth, and then just do it. Just go.
Brilliant.
Ovaries out. I was gonna say balls out, but ovaries out.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
There's not
Go
really
hard.
gender neutral statement there, is there? It's just like,
No,
they're brilliant.
yeah.
Fascinating. Well, Iwan, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been really fascinating talking to you, and lots of great learning from there and great references. And for anyone that was interested in getting in touch with you or AI Studios, what would be the best way of doing that?
So you can email us. So hello at aiaistudios.com, and that's
Yep.
plural studios. And then we're also on LinkedIn, so you can just search AiAi Studios, which is AiAi Studios. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, and it's my name, Aiwan Obinyan. That's AiWan for November, and my surname is Obinyan.
Brilliant. Well, look, it'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months and catch up with you again. And good luck with everything you're doing, the podcast and everything else. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's been a brilliant conversation, and I
Yeah,
love the work that you're doing with Action Coach as well.
thank you. Thank you.